The following was recorded on Sunday, July 26th, 2020.
Just when you thought 2020 couldn't be any more bizarre, he comes along. Now from the man cave in Mountain View, California, it's Nick Pinkerton with the Twisted Wrister Podcast.
Aloha, Twisters. Welcome to another Twistcast. It is Sunday, July 26th, and we are just 6 days away from playoff hockey. Can you believe it? We're getting playoff hockey in August. All the weirdest things are happening this year. I just can't, my brain is so scrambled from all of this. But nonetheless, hockey's coming back. Things are starting to kind of turn a little bit more optimistically if you look at things that way. We've got baseball back already. And my San Francisco Giants actually got a win, and I'm super happy about that. But as far as my other favorite teams go, well, my Sharks aren't in the playoffs. Even the Buffalo Sabres, who I would consider my second team, they're nowhere to be seen in this postseason as well. But nonetheless, I'm happy to be watching some playoff hockey, and I hope you are as well. So in just a little bit, we'll bring on Evan from Dynamic Python here on YouTube. He'll be talking to me a little bit about the Rangers and the rest of the playoffs. Before that, though, it seems like there's been a lot of news in the last 24 hours. Unfortunately, kind of at the top of that is the passing of Leafs great Eddie Shack. He has passed away at 83, so our hearts go out to his family and his friends and his circle there. A terrific career and, just a legend in Leafs hockey history. So, Eddie, rest in peace. There's also been some news around particular players before we head into these postseason rounds here. Some bad news, unfortunately. Brent Seabrook will be out for the Chicago Blackhawks. But on the good side, at least Corey Crawford is coming back, and he wasn't being held back because of injury issues, nothing to do with his concussions. So that's very fortunate. He had just tested positive for COVID-19, but everything should be okay now. So I'm very glad to see Crow in there. With him in net, the Hawks have a much better chance, I think, against the Oilers. So good to have Corey back. Steven Stamkos, he could miss the round robin for the Lightning. Ilya Samsonov will unfortunately miss the playoffs for the Washington Capitals. He had such a good season for them, so Braden Holtby will be called upon as the starter there, and hopefully he can look like the Holt Beast from 2 years ago. He did not have a good season, so Braden Holtby, we're going to be cheering you on, and Samsonov, sorry to hear that he's on the shelf there. Another thing that has been brought up today is the departure of general manager John Chayka from the Arizona Coyotes. He had been there for 4 seasons as general manager, and I was a fan of some of the moves that he made, acquiring players like Vinny Hinostroza and Nick Schmaltz. The Galchenyuk trade, to a degree, I thought could have been a nice kind of turnaround for his career there, but that didn't last very long. But he issued a statement, and there wasn't really too much substance. He did cite some, differences of opinion with ownership there, but the Coyotes themselves issued this statement regarding the termination of the contract for their former general manager. Quote, John Chayka has quit as the general manager and president of hockey operations of the Arizona Coyotes. See, they've said he has quit. They didn't say he has resigned, he has stepped down, he has decided to part ways. Nothing like that. They said he has quit. Continuing, the club is disappointed in his actions and his timing as the Coyotes prepare to enter the NHL's hub city of Edmonton, where the team will begin postseason play for the first time since 2012. So again, they're saying the club is disappointed in his actions. It's almost like he had done something tremendously wrong, outside of the front office or inside the front office for that matter, that prompted his resignation. Of course, we don't know exactly what that is, so I'm not going to speculate, but just the language here is very stern, I would say. The club is moving forward and has named Steve Sullivan as interim general manager. So Steve Sullivan had a nice little career of his own. I think about his time particularly with the Predators. Continues to say he has the full support of the entire organization, including team ownership, executive leadership, players, and coaches. The club will have no further comment on this matter, as the club remains focused on the opportunity to pursue a Stanley Cup. So sucks to see that, he's backed out of there. Again, I liked the potential of having someone like that in a GM position to hopefully generate more excitement for the team and generate kind of a new way of building a roster in a market that isn't quite as attractive there in the desert. So nonetheless, I'm still excited to see what ownership will achieve. You have a Latino owner and you have a Latino president, and obviously that will be very important for that market to, grow the fan base and to have a more consistent attendance and whatnot. So super bizarre. I mean, Arizona, you think they're going to turn the corner, and then something weird like that kind of sets them back. They go get Phil Kessel, and, they didn't have to trade too much to get him, honestly. But Kessel has a total disappointment. Well, anyway, I hope he's able to turn it around. I hope that, of course, Taylor Hall is able to, be a boost to this team's production on offense. And we'll see how Arizona does the rest of the way, but really bizarre. But anyway, I think it's time to turn it over to my special guest, Evan of the channel Dynamic Python. All right, now I'm joined by Evan. He has a channel on YouTube called Dynamic Python. He recently eclipsed 1,000 subscribers, and he's been on Twisted Wrister Hockey before and guessed the jersey and our playoff preview between the Hurricanes and the Rangers. Evan, welcome to the Twistcast.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Certainly. What got you into making videos on YouTube in the first place?
So, at first I started YouTube kind of with playing Call of Duty Zombies. That was my favorite game growing up, and just watching other people do that, I just found it amazing and just saw a great community, and I kind of wanted to build that and start talking to other people that like zombies just like me. And then I kind of shifted over into sports once the game started dying, and specifically obviously the Rangers and the New York Mets, because those are my two teams. And yeah, I just kind of found it fun to do.
Awesome. Do you cover any other teams besides them?
Occasionally I'll make videos about other teams. Like, I do prediction videos sometimes. I do obviously also some franchise videos, so those are on like other teams sometimes on NHL 20 or MLB The Show. And then I do some NHL quiz videos also that I find on like Sporkle.
Awesome. Yeah, I love playing those to kind of pass the time away. And you know what? One thing that I was hoping to ask you about, I'll just go ahead and ask now that it's fresh in my mind. What were your reactions? What were your thoughts on Seattle's unveiling of the Kraken and the look and the jerseys and all that?
I mean, it was the worst kept secret, the team name. That was honestly the worst kept secret in the world. Everyone knew that it was going to be a team name, and I was all for it. I like the name. I'm not too crazy about the logo like most people are. I just think having an S is kind of boring. I know like the octopus tentacle or whatever in the logo and all that, but I just don't find it that great as most people do. I do like the jersey designs. I like the second anchor logo with the needle on it. I think that one looks better than the logo that they have now as their main.
Yeah, I think that incorporating that Space Needle into the secondary logo was a great touch there. I myself, I like the logo. I don't think it's, revolutionary by any means, but even though they're playing it a little safe, it looks like something that I think people can get on board with. It's not too crazy. It's not like you have tentacles all over the place. Anyway, looking at your channel and your expertise in hockey and whatnot, so what's kind of your history with hockey? How did you become a hockey fan, and how has that kind of changed over the years?
So when I want to say like 6 years old, my mom decided to take me to a Ranger game against the Islanders because I live on the island actually and not in New York City. So we went to the Coliseum and kind of just started from there. I got a warm-up puck from Henrik Lundqvist. He tossed one to me. So I was just watching the game and I just really enjoyed it. The Rangers ended up winning that game, and that's kind of how it all started.
Got it. Have you actually met any players?
There was one time before a playoff game that I went to in 2015, I believe it was. It was 2014 or 2015 when I went, and I waited at the front entrance before morning skate. I met Ryan McDonough, JT Miller, and Chris Kreider, and of course, only Kreider's still here.
Yeah, well, you basically met a couple of Lightning players then.
Yeah, two guys got shipped to Tampa Bay, which was ironic considering they beat us that year in 2015.
Do you actually find yourself following the Lightning or following teams that have acquired players from the Rangers?
Not really. The only player really that I like paying attention to still is Zuccarello, because he was definitely one of my favorite players growing up.
How could you not like Zook? I mean, first of all, the only Norwegian-born hockey player out there. He's one of the smaller guys, but he's a great playmaker. And I've got a Rangers jersey of his. I've got a Dallas Stars jersey that I literally had customized, and then like 2 weeks later he decided to sign with the Wild. So I'm out to get a Wild jersey of his. So then that way we've got the holy trinity of Zuccarello jerseys.
Yeah, Zuccarello is amazing. I mean, players on the team cried when he left. It just shows how much of an impact he was to the team and how great of a player he was for the team. He really took the heart of the fans, and when he even still pays attention to the team, and it still holds a place in his heart. And I know it because of the comments he made during the season about like how they're treating Lundqvist. So clearly, he still cares about the team, and it's just cool to see.
Definitely. So with YouTube, you've been, of course, you've probably put out several dozen, if not, a couple hundred videos. So for yourself, is that something that you're considering maybe doing, in the near future, or or is it going to kind of relate to what you might want to do for a job or a career?
In the future, I'm kind of trying to get into things that are sports wise. Like I'm looking to get into working for a sports team at some point, whether that's as a scout, general manager, maybe in the future, assistant general manager, whatever it could be, as a front office job in hockey or baseball. I mean, I'm looking to do something like that.
Did you actually grow up playing hockey at all?
I played floor hockey. I played ice hockey like one season when I was really little, but most of it was just floor hockey since I wasn't really the greatest at skating. So
I know that we obviously collaborated on a video together, but maybe a few things we can kind of reiterate here, and I have some other questions. But with the Rangers, how do you think they've played against the Hurricanes over the last couple of seasons?
I mean, over the last 10 seasons, they've had the Canes number. Obviously, the teams have changed so much. The Rangers went through a rebuild completely. So the only player that's still there, obviously, is Lundqvist and Kreider. Those are the only players. The Canes have changed also. They went through their kind of rebuild phase, getting Aho, Svechnikov, guys like that. So, but the Rangers have, for some reason, had the Canes number the past few years. And this year, I think really it's just the heavy offense of the Rangers that the Canes can't handle. I mean, the Rangers are, I think, 10-2 against teams that play the neutral zone trap this season, and the Canes are one of those teams. And yeah, I just think the Rangers, with their high-powered offense, are able to go through the Canes.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because, the Canes might have to make some adjustments heading into this series. It looks like Brett Pesce is still a question mark, so we don't know about him, but we've heard that Dougie Hamilton will not play. So I like Carolina's defensive depth there, but those are two big guys for them to be out of the lineup,
Yeah, and also the other thing that gives me confidence as a Ranger fan going into the series, forget the season series, forget all of that. I saw someone else, I forgot the channel, I would give him credit if I remembered it, but he brought up a good point that with the way they're structured and the neutral zone trap is, it's going to be harder for them to adjust coming into the playoffs compared to a team like the Rangers that just come out flying and come out with that high-powered offense and everything. It's going to be harder for teams like the Canes, Islanders, and the Blue Jackets to adjust and get back to that structured system, and it could bring them to a slower start.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've been away from the action for so long, and now with some of the injuries that have taken place, even though you couldn't necessarily predict those a few months ago, that definitely changes the outlook on things. Now, you mentioned of course, we know about the fantastic Hart Trophy caliber season from Artemi Panarin. We know Mika Zibanejad had a fantastic year as well. And we know that Shesterkin came in here and was lights out. So what about the Rangers' strengths apart from that? Do you think people might overlook? Is there maybe a player or two that we haven't been talking about as much that we should keep our eye on heading into these playoffs?
Well, it's a little weird, but Kako, honestly, people are labeling him as a bust already, which is just ridiculous in itself. No player that's 19 years old is a bust. It's just ridiculous to me. And he has looked really good in camp, according to the people that are there, like the writers, reporters, journalists, whoever's there. They're talking about how great he's looked in camp, so he could be huge in these playoffs coming up. Kreider, when he's on his game, is on a whole nother level. He is the fastest guy out on the ice. He plays with a lot of speed and grit. He's really good at screening the goalie, setting up those opportunities for Zibanejad and Panarin to score those big time goals. So those two guys could be big. Same with Buchnevich. He's kind of a little under the radar, and he can get some sneaky goals.
Definitely. I'm a Buchnevich fan. I've been since he joined the club, basically. He also has, like, the most fun last name to pronounce that's not Finnish, I think. and
also like Frankenstein.
Well, hopefully he has a monster performance against Carolina here. And then, of course, we know Shesterkin had a great season, although somewhat abbreviated for him. So is he just by default the number one going into things, or now that Lundqvist has had a few months off, do you think that he'll be fresh enough to get the start?
I think that Igor's got to get the start. I just think it's a no-brainer to me because it's not the fact that Lundqvist had just a bad season this year compared to what he was. It's last season also. The season before he wasn't good enough also, and he's been given numerous opportunities to prove himself, and he just clearly doesn't have it like he once did. I could see him being the backup. I mean, I still like Georgiev more as the backup goalie, but I think Igor is the clear-cut number one. I know momentum doesn't mean much, but the way he was playing and helping the team try to get them in the playoffs, I mean, it just had you not start the kid.
The numbers are pretty night and day versus Lundqvist, and I saw similar things with a couple other teams out there, like the Panthers, for example. You know, Bobrovsky had a terrible season by his standards, and then they brought in this Chris Drieger guy for 11, 12 games, and you're looking at, you know, a small sample size, of course, but with the Vezina caliber numbers that you see there, it's almost like, well, shoot, why wouldn't you just give this guy a shot if he's just outpacing anybody who's going to be between the pipes there? So I can see what you mean when it comes to Igor Shesterkin for sure.
The other difference, though, between Bobrovsky and then Lundqvist is Bobrovsky has been in the postseason more recently and has proved he has that clutch factor and he turns it up in the postseason. Lundqvist has not been in the playoffs since 2017, and it's pretty clear that he's not the same goalie as he was then.
Yeah, I mean, good point about Bob. I mean, he's still in the prime of his career, too. And that's the nice thing. You can still be in your 30s as a goaltender and find elements to your game that hadn't been, you know, perfected until then. Now, outside of that matchup between the Canes and your Rangers, are there any other matchups you're particularly looking forward to? And have you actually predicted the outcome of each of the matchups?
Yeah, I did. I kind of made predictions for each matchup, and I'm kind of looking forward to the Islanders-Panthers series a little bit just because all my friends are Islander fans pretty much, and it's all the talk about the Islanders here, living on the island. That's always the talk, and it's always hearing, you know, one cup since 40, and it's just funny for me watching the Islanders fail, but I'm kind of rooting for them this series just so they can't get off if they lose.
It's a good point, man. And I think that is a very intriguing matchup as well because you've got Barry Trotz going up against Joel Quenneville, two of the most winning coaches of all time. That's pretty interesting. And even more so, those are two totally different teams, with the Islanders having a defensive commitment and the Panthers can just run and gun and could possibly, you know, win each game 5-4.
Yeah, and that kind of like circles back to the thing I was talking about before, how with that Islanders defensive structure, it's going to be harder for them to adjust, but if they could adjust to it right and they could go on a little bit of a run, I just don't see them really going as far as like past the second round. Same with the Panthers. I mean, they have a good offensive team, but I don't really see them going past the second round. It's going to be a little bit of a weird series.
Yeah, for sure. I think that if Bobrovsky, of course, turns it on, then things can swing in Florida's favor. But I'm picking the Islanders for that one because I'll always pick the team that has more reliable goaltending and defense. But who do you have for that series?
I have the Panthers just because of the I think Bobrovsky's going to be standing on his head in the series. And like I said, the whole thing about adjusting with the defensive structure, I'm just kind of a believer in that. And that's why I have the Leafs winning also. And then I have the Rangers winning just because.
And between Pittsburgh and Montreal?
I have Pittsburgh winning that series.
Okay, so I mean that's the only one that we agree on in the Eastern Conference because I'm picking the other teams. Of course, I'm not an expert when it comes to this, so we'll just have to watch and see. What about in the West? Which matchup do you look forward to most there?
Blackhawks and Oilers for sure. Just seeing Kane versus McDavid is going to be fun. And the fact that one of those
Fantastic.
teams have a chance at getting Lafreniere is pretty unfair to me, but I know Windy City will be happy if they get Laf.
Definitely so. I mean, I'm sure that there are some people who they're like, yeah, we shouldn't even be in the playoffs. So, I mean, I don't really care what happens to my team. It's nice to have hockey back, but I'd rather, instead of winning a round, I'd rather have a legitimate shot at the first overall pick. So, who are you picking in that series and the other ones in the West?
I think the Oilers take that series. If Coach Q is behind the bench for the Hawks, it would maybe be a bit of a different story, but just Crawford is not the same goalie as he once was to me, and I feel like that's going to be the downfall for the Hawks. But if he could turn up his game, then the Hawks could sneak away with the series.
Interesting. I mean, I'm just really happy that he's able to play. I thought that there was something that had kind of carried over from his concussion issues, but
he has such a bad injury history. I thought it was that also.
yeah, but I mean, it's great that it was only just a matter of him testing positive for the virus, and I'm sure he's tested negative since then. So good for Crow. And I'm also picking the Oilers there too. I think their defense is actually kind of overlooked. I think that that could be the difference there. I'd rather lean on that defensive core versus Chicago's, even if Brent Seabrook was healthy there. And then let's see what else. We've got Jets and Flames. We got a Canadian battle there. Who do you like there?
That's a tough series. I think if Hellbuck is on his Vezina game, the Jets win the series without a question. But if Hellbuck has some rust and gets to a slow start, the Flames could easily take this series. But I do like the Jets' chances more, and I don't really see Hellbuck coming in rusty and looking bad in that. So I like the Jets' chances there.
Mm-hmm. I agree as well. It was interesting because I like to make really wild predictions before the season starts, and I actually said Calgary would actually make a run to the finals. But in this case, I give a slight edge to the Jets. It's hard to not see that going 5 games, but with the Jets, they've just been the more consistent team all year. They've been able, of course, Hellebuck's had a hell of a year, but they've just been more reliable, as I mentioned earlier, kind of defense and goaltending. I'll take those guys out there, and you can say the same regarding top lines even, right? Calgary has a good top 6, but Winnipeg has probably a more dominant top line, so I'll give the Jets an edge there, but I do see that going 5. And then we've got Canucks and Wild, and we've got Predators and Coyotes. Who do you like for those series?
I like the Canucks for sure against the Wild. The Wild just don't really... Their offense kind of sluggish. I do like their defense a little bit, but I don't know. Goaltending's a huge question mark for me. I just think that the Canucks have every single advantage in that series.
I love me some Jacob Markstrom. Stalock did a nice job for the Wild, but I think Markstrom has been more valuable to the Canucks than the rest of the hockey world would necessarily recognize. So I see Canucks in that series too. And then what about the last one?
This is a series that I'm so back and forth on. It's so difficult to predict this one because if Phil Kessel and Taylor Hall are on their game and the Coyotes come out flying, then the Coyotes can take the series. But I just like the Predators' defense more in the series, and I have to pick them to win. And I just like the experience from Pekka Rinne and that if he does start over Saros.
I'd like to see Rinne come back to form too. You can say that these playoffs are definitely a redemption story for various goaltenders out there, like Henrik Lundqvist. If he does get summoned to play, if he looks good in camp, like Sergei Bobrovsky, and like a couple others out there. But even that aside, you look at Arizona's goaltending situation. It doesn't matter who you have in net. You could even put Aiden Hill there, and he's still going to put up some good numbers. So, yeah, I like Nashville's kind of attack. I like how they don't lean on one guy or one line to generate the offense for them. But I'm actually going to go with a little more of an upset and pick Arizona there. But again, that one there should be probably one of the closer battles in my opinion. And then I was just going to ask you before we kind of round out our playoff discussion there. So who would you, let's say the Rangers win, okay? Good luck to them, of course. So between the 4 top seeds in the East, and for our viewers, that's the Bruins, that's the Lightning, the Capitals, and the Flyers. So which team do you think that the Rangers would have the best shot against in the next round?
I can tell you right off the bat, definitely not the Flyers. The Rangers have been awful against the Flyers this season, and with the Flyers, something I just wanted to get out of the way is that I as a Raider fan, I hate that they're doing well, but at the same time, I'm happy they are because my friend was giving me so much crap last season. Like before the season started, I predicted the Flyers to finish 3rd in the Metro, and it's just kind of cool to see them actually translating that success. But I definitely don't want the Rangers playing them. I think Washington is the best team we could play just because of the fact if Lundqvist is starting, I do like the fact that he's familiar with that Washington team, and I just like the way they played against Washington this year.
Yeah, I think that if you look at some of these other teams, the Bruins, I mean, they hit anything that moves out there. The Lightning, I mean, you guys had a scary good offense this year, but Tampa, if Stamkos is healthy, I know that he's kind of sitting out for right now, but if he turns it on, then that team is lethal right there. The Flyers, they just seem to have the mojo going, and Carter Hart has had a great sophomore season. The Capitals, I would actually agree with you. If I were to go up, if I could choose an opponent for you guys in the next round, I would choose Washington. And I mean, it's already been said that Samsonov is actually going to miss.
I was about to get into that. That the fact that Holtby's playing makes me like the Rangers' chances if they play Washington even more.
Yeah.
And I think the Rangers would end up playing Washington if they didn't do the round robin, which is kind of frustrating because I think they end up playing the 3 seed just because of the way it works out. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they're doing the round robin's frustrating just because it's not guaranteed that we're playing Washington now.
One thing that I also wanted to ask you about was jerseys. Obviously, you appeared with me on Guess the Jersey, and so you do have some in your collection. Is there anything else that you collect besides jerseys?
Nothing really besides that. I mean, it's kind of just jerseys for me.
Okay. So which one or which jerseys would you want to add to your collection next? If money's not an issue, for example.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Because there's so many that like. I really love the Coyotes Kachina jersey a lot. The Adidas version just looks really nice for that one. So I think I would choose that even though I have a Coyotes jersey.
I bet it looks really good in Adidas as well. I'm kind of torn in that, I mean, I bet that logo, the fabric looks terrific. Although I do kind of have a thing where I like the idea of collecting, if it's a vintage design, I want to collect the actual jersey from that era. So I'm not sure on that one. Not to mention, I don't know how you think about this, but I'm a huge fan of the peyote jersey with like the coyote head and the desert scape. I think that one right there, that will need to be a guilty purchase one of these days. What about Rangers jerseys? Is there anything else that you're looking to add to your collection one of these days?
I mean, with the Rangers, there's not really a lot of options. If they do bring back the Lady Liberty, I would like to get my hands on an Adidas version of that. But other than that, I mean, I have one for each. I guess Adidas home jersey because I have a Fanatics one, and Fanatics are just not the best. And I would like to just add a Adidas home Ranger jersey.
Well, I totally recommend it. It looks great. I mean, Rangers jerseys, doesn't matter who's making the jersey. Just that look, you know, it's something that you can never get away from. It's something you can never change. You can go back to the Statue of Liberty, of course, or use that as an alternate, and I certainly have grown fond of that. But yeah, that word mark, there's only one team who I want to see wearing that in the NHL.
Yeah, and when the Canes kind of switched that with their road jerseys, I kind of got a little salty, and the Canes actually replied to me on Twitter because like I was ragging on them for doing a word mark, and I forgot exactly what they replied to me with, but they were just like, just because the Rangers have a word mark doesn't mean we can, or something along those lines. It was ridiculous, but it was kind of funny to see that they replied.
Yeah, I get a kick out of it too. I got a reply from the Avalanche last year regarding a certain free agency move because they got a former Shark. I love the Avs Twitter, by the way. I think that's probably my favorite account that I've kind of followed. What do you have any other accounts that you follow besides the Rangers that you like?
I follow every NHL team, so I don't know. I like the Canes account, even though I hate the Canes themselves. I do like their account. They do put out some funny tweets sometimes.
It seems like you guys are getting a little chummy with the Hurricanes these days.
I like it though because most of it's always with the Islanders and the Devils. Not that the Devils are competitive now, but like in the early 2010s, it was Rangers Devils, that rivalry.
Sure.
Rangers Islanders has been a rivalry for ever since the Islanders existed, and then I'd like to see some new rivals.
All right, so let's say the Rangers have a valiant playoff effort. Let's say they get through Carolina here, and maybe they go 7 games against somebody in the next round and bow out. All right, what would be your dream Stanley Cup matchup with the teams that would still be left? So who would you want to see in the finals? Let's do both. So how about you give me a Stanley Cup Finals opponent if the Rangers made it, and then give me a matchup if the Rangers didn't make it?
That's a tough question. I do like the way we would play maybe against Arizona, just because their offense isn't too great and our defense isn't the best. I mean, with Lindy Ruff gone, I'm hoping that improves, but just with the way Arizona's offense is compared to the other teams, like I don't want to face maybe Minnesota also.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't want to face a team like Edmonton with that offense, face Chicago with that offense. So I'd have to pick one of those two teams probably, and I'm leaning towards Minnesota.
My hopeful matchup, I mean, because my Sharks are long out, and the team I like after them is the Sabres, and we already know that they're in the crapper. But I'd go for the Panthers and the Wild, so totally different there. Or even Panthers Coyotes, just to make a ton of people pissed off because those hockey markets are so much smaller. All right, so what about, let's say, okay, the Rangers don't make it to the finals. What would be the matchup that would entertain you the most?
This is weird to say as a Ranger fan, but I have to say, just because I want my prediction to be true, I want it to be Philly and Colorado. And it's weird to say I want Philly in the final as a Ranger fan.
Mm-hmm.
It's just because, like I said, I want to prove my friend wrong. But not just about that. I feel like that would be a really entertaining series with the way both their offenses are, with the way the defenses are also. And then you have two good goalies. You have Bauer versus or Francouz, whoever's starting for them, versus Carter Hart. And I feel like it would be a nice series.
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued to see what Colorado does with goaltending because, Francouz was fantastic this year, and Grubauer's been very good in certain stints as well. So I think if I had to choose one team in the West in terms of just their style of play, I would put Colorado probably at the top as well. And even, I'll even say this, I mean, Vegas is entertaining to watch as well. I'm not a Knights fan by any means, but I'd probably say that they'd be kind of maybe second or third in the West for me. And then in the East, if I had to choose a team based on just, entertainment value, I think, of course, Tampa Bay versus Colorado would be great. Even Florida versus Colorado, just to see those forward cores go at it.
Just please not Boston, and then obviously the Islanders also as a Ranger fan, but definitely not Boston because I just don't want them winning the cup. I don't like Boston at all.
Yeah, stick to baseball, Boston. Fantastic. Well, Evan, thanks so much for coming on the channel. Again, guys, check out his channel. It's called Dynamic Python. By the way, why did you call it Dynamic Python?
I don't even know. My channel name before was Dark Hockey before this, so I felt like I wanted a name change because I found it a little bit weird, the name, and it just wouldn't stick out as much. And I don't know, I just kind of came up with this name randomly.
So you're still trying to wrap your head around it, but nonetheless, it's a fun channel to go check out, guys. So thank you so much, Evan, for being on the show. You have a great rest of the in-between time before we start the playoffs, and good luck to the Rangers.
Thank you for having me on, and enjoy watching the playoffs. I mean, I know it's rough because not only is your team not in the playoffs, but it stings that you had top 3 pick, but obviously it's Ottawa's.
Yeah, I'm hoping Tampa Bay gets their butt kicked so that first round pick we got from them is a little bit better. But man, I'm still losing sleep over that.
Yeah, that's got to be really frustrating. I mean, the Sharks, I could see them bouncing back though. They got to get better in goal. That's really the main issue.
Yeah.
Martin Jones is just not it.
Well, I think things will get better if they keep Nabokov in as the goaltending coach. But even so, they're going to look, even if Jones had a good season next year, they're going to look to, find a way to offload him to Seattle or somebody else.
Yeah, Brent Burns.
Yeah. I mean, I love me some Burns, but they got to shed one of those contracts between he and Vlasic. And I think that they'll probably look to move Burns before Vlasic just because Burns obviously has the offensive upside. He's an Iron Man. He doesn't miss a game. And they already have Carlson, so they already have, a very offensively minded defenseman. So I think it would make more sense to move Burns between the two.
I just think, doesn't Vlasic though have a no movement clause?
You're probably right. I think that's the case. Obviously, he would have to waive it. We got to find some way to pitch the idea of him going to Montreal, but obviously I'm hoping that these guys are still, healthy to stick around for a couple of years if they can't, go somewhere else. But Doug Wilson, he's kind of put himself behind the eight ball here. He's gotten himself out of this before, but let's just first of all figure out who our head coach is going to be next year and take it from there, I guess.
Yeah, if anyone screwed themselves though, Kevin LeBanc. I mean, he screwed himself. Really did, taking that team discount.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly commend him for doing that and betting on himself, but I don't know what he's going to expect because he didn't have a good year. And so, if he wants to stick around with the team, the Sharks will probably be like, okay, how about you, take a $1.5 or $2 million contract so you get a pay raise, and we'll give you that for 3 years, and you can play on our third line. And he'll be like, F this, I'm not doing that. And they'll be like, well, good luck finding somebody who's going to pay you, $4 million after the season you just had.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's some teams that I know want to trade for him, which is kind of weird. I mean, I guess he's still young, so I guess that's why.
If somebody wants to give us a better first round pick for him, of course I don't expect that to happen.
It was ridiculous. I was seeing all the trades about how the Rangers should trade Georgiev to get him and maybe a pick or something. I'm like, no, please do not do that.
You still want to keep Georgiev, even though he didn't really have that good of a year?
Absolutely. I love him as the backup. I think that he's going to get better as the backup, and if they could sign him on a cheap deal as the backup, I would be happy with that. Have him and Igor as a tandem. I know we have Tyler Wall in the system, but then you could trade Wall to get better up front offensively since we don't really have top-end prospects offensively with the exception of Kravtsov.
Definitely cool to bring on a Rangers fan, somebody from the other side of the country, and a young YouTuber that he'll continue to grow his channel and develop his skills over time there. So really happy to have him on this channel and in the other videos he's appeared in as well. So anyway, I'm going to kind of cut things a little bit short this time around because I want to save some of these topics that have been suggested by you guys for another future cast, because next weekend it's probably going to be just myself running this podcast. So we'll be talking more about jerseys. We'll talk about maybe some rule changes for the future, spitballing and having some fun with some wild brainstorming there. And I'll be talking more about playoffs as they continue to happen as well. So we'll save some of that good stuff for later. If you have any future suggestions, be sure to let me know in the comments below or follow me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and hit me up there. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you for listening in to this edition of the Twistcast. Make sure that if you haven't already, subscribe to me on YouTube. You can also download these Twistcasts on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/twistedwristerhockey, and you might be able to find some of my older rap songs for when I was still coming out of college. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you later. Ciao.